Hello, day two. Good morning, everyone. Really excited to moderate today's session around this commitment to action and really the work taking place around this EV Interconnection Tiger Team. To start, though, to ground us in that conversation, at our last Road to 2028 Summit in December, the City of LA and LADWP made a commitment to create a Tiger Team really focused on identifying specific challenges and obstacles that are getting in the way of accelerating charging infrastructure deployment and really alleviating those in the run-up to the 2028 games. So, and really to create a lasting legacy for Los Angeles. So really exciting work. That commitment really recognize something that I think we hear again and again from a lot of the charging developers, from a lot of the folks in this room today, and that's the technology is there. It's really, can we coordinate well enough together to really meet the moment and scale up in time? So obviously the utility role in that is extremely critical, and so want to get into that today. And, you know, LACI is, just for context, had the privilege of really serving as one of the conveners of this Tiger Team. So I'm fortunate and excited to be joined by three leaders of that who are going to be sharing a little bit of their perspectives. Jason, I want to start with you because LADWP is, of course, such a critical partner in this work. If you could just share a little bit about, you know, your guys' perspective on this, really what is the EV interconnection challenge, if you will, and how are y'all approaching it?
Yeah, so, you know, thank you, first of all, for, you know, the leadership role that you and LACI has played in elevating this topic, because we often talk about our clean energy goals. You heard all about it this morning, 100% by 2035. Just in the last 24 months, we have energized the city's largest, one of the largest solar and storage projects in the entire country. We're off of coal completely. Half of our power was coal just 15 or so years ago. And again, just in the last 24 months, we have committed $5 billion of new clean energy commitments between distributed resources and new renewable energy. That gets all of the attention, and rightfully so. We obviously talk about it, we brag about it, we're very, very proud of that achievement. But what goes under the radar is the climate and environmental importance of a utility's ability to get customers connected. And it seems a little bit abstract, but I'll try to sort of tie it together for you. LA is extraordinarily unique for all the reasons we talked about earlier. There's a significant sprawl. It's an older city. There's you know, a historical underinvestment in housing and transit, but a lot of that is changing. We have the opportunity. The city is undergoing a transit renaissance. We are trying to electrify vehicles. We are trying to electrify buildings. We are facing the homelessness and housing crisis by building more and more housing. We've got port electrification, airport electrification, and all across the city, all of that is changing. And what's the common thread there? The common thread is to make all of that happen, LADWP has to get people connected quickly and affordably and predictably. And so, again, I really appreciate you elevating this topic, because our interconnection policy, our interconnection performance really has a climate impact, and it really has a local air quality impact that often goes under the radar. So we're very proud to commit to that. In addition to the Tiger Team, we obviously stood up our internal team to kind of meet some of the goals of the Tiger Team with the Mayor's Executive Directive 19. A little bit of what's different, and you've probably, you know, people in the crowd here might have heard in years past our efforts to, you know, streamline processes and that sort of thing. One of the big differences here is that now we have made this policy with Executive Directive 19 and with the leadership from our Board of Water and Power Commissioners. We have now made it a policy that we engage folks like LACI, that we engage the electric vehicle developers and the housing developers. So we're very proud of that, and again, we appreciate the opportunity to share that with you.
Yeah, no, you've been great partners, and you can really feel that difference as we go about the work. And I think the one thing that's become abundantly clear is that the scope of the Tiger Team just needed to be larger than interconnection by itself, right? These projects also touch permitting, planning, public works, and just a lot of different city processes. And Michael, I'd love to get your perspective here. You know, how has the city really worked to bring in other departments into that conversation, and how's that all developing?
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate the question. You know, sort of following on what Jason was saying, the devil is in the details with this work, right? So we can make an announcement, we can say we're going to do this or we're going to do that, and fortunately you need to have those in order to set the tone and get staff working on things, and then getting to the nitty-gritty, working through the processes, working through the steps, and I know Jason and a bunch of his colleagues have had to suffer through me for a decade on these kind of things, asking about, well, why this, why that, what is the reason for this thing or that thing? And the reality is, even just with interconnection, you're probably going to be dealing with our Bureau of Engineering, who manages the right-of-way. If you need to put up a new pole, if you need to dig something up in the street, that is our Public Works division. If you need to get a traffic control plan because you've now triggered some right-of-way work, you're dealing with LADWP. And then, you know, whatever other fixes or improvements are needed in the right-of-way, you've just triggered a whole bunch of other city departments. So this isn't a one department show, and it requires us getting in there with our hands. And fortunately, all of our general managers from all the departments are very focused. Per Jason's note of ED19, we have a pathway here, we have direction, and while the city is quite resource strapped in several of our departments, knowing that a lot of extra work up front to make this work better alleviates work and processes and duplicative things down the road, it's worth the effort up front. So I'm happy to say it is both welcomed in some way by our departments to really dig into it, and the results, while maybe they won't be tangible here in the next year or two, down the road we're going to really see how this accelerates things. So the city is ready to do this, and it also exposes sometimes where we need to put more resources in our departments, which is also important.
Right on. Yeah, it's been really cross-cutting, and it's been, you know, these processes take time. Tom, I want to get your perspective here as a charging developer with Voltera here. So surely a lot of these different moving pieces can breed a lot of uncertainty when you're doing a lot of planning up front. There's a lot of capital being deployed. What does that uncertainty really mean on the ground for a company like Voltera when you're planning on deploying chargers, when you're planning on deploying this capital in the city?
Sure, thanks, Adam. So there's a lot of complexity about what we're doing and how we have to work with our partners to execute. Just to level set, what we're talking about are, at least in a market like LA, every single facility that we're developing is an 8-figure investment. Our customers and we align on a timeline for when that facility needs to go live to support either their market entry or, in a place like LA, their market expansion, their ability to serve their customers in a way that they have publicly announced. What I would acknowledge is that everything matters. Like, timeline matters, cost matters, all the coordination matters. And in a very upfront manner, we have to first find the right site. That's real estate, it's land use, it's utility and power, and yes, it's cost. So all of that orchestration is what we're doing day in, day out. And quite frankly, if things change along the way, that can kill a project, very simply. Whether that's be a cost or even a timing element. What I would acknowledge is that even from the get-go, because these are investment-grade decisions that we're making due to the amount of capital involved, the information that we need to work with has to be investment-grade. And that has been a challenge and a process for us and others in our space, working with our utility partners and other key players in this ecosystem, including our city partners, which usually is a land use related relationship, but in LA, it's everything. It's land use, it's power, and more. So I just should acknowledge that there's a lot of complexity that goes along with that, and that's because of the size of the investment and the impact that these projects can have. I mean, just to level set, what we're talking about are average sites, 40 or 50 charging stalls. They're operating 24/7, 5+ megawatts of power, and that translates to serving multiple hundreds of vehicles a day. And over the course of the year, it translates to thousands of tons of avoided emissions because these vehicles are zero emissions.
Thanks, Tom. I want to build on this a little bit. In tandem to the commitment made by the city and LADWP, Voltera also made a commitment to invest charging infrastructure in Los Angeles, and really to the tune of, I think, up to $50 million worth of investment. But I think the critical component was, and I want your take on this, is that it's contingent upon some of these improvements to really unlock those deployments. So can you share with us an incredible commitment, so round of applause there. But can you share with us a little bit about that, what you all really need to see in terms of improvements to unlock that investment?
Sure. Well, let me first acknowledge Voltera has a much grander vision than what has been sort of publicly committed or communicated at this stage. But the realization is that there is not a feasible path for us to make or deliver on that commitment without the work that we're talking about here. Just from a very practical standpoint, all of these pieces have to come together. We have to be able to orchestrate them. We and our customers have to be able to rely upon them, and our partners, DWP, city, et cetera, they also have to be able to rely on us and our ability to turn around what we need to do to be true partners in this process. What I would acknowledge is that, the number that you cited, that really isn't that many projects. But when we were really thinking about this last year, our CEO really was uncomfortable making too much of a commitment because he's very cognizant of what this looks like and the challenges, and in some cases truly barriers to doing this work. So I think our hope is that we can not just accelerate all of this work for us and others, but we can position this to make a much larger commitment, which truly for Voltera is not necessarily investment that we would not otherwise make. It's really leveraging the vision, the commitments, the goals of LA28, our customers, to bring forward investments that we would otherwise be making in this market, but over a longer period of time. So I think we've got a clock on this, to be sure, and that's, I think, been a big theme of the Tiger Team work. But if we can land the plane of this work over the next few months, I think that's really going to unlock the ability of Voltera, our customers, partners, to work together in such a way that we can not only deliver the commitment that we've already communicated, but expand and grow that commitment.
Yeah, and I know we're due to share some more exciting updates soon, like really officially. But we really kicked off this work in March, and I think one of the first things I wanted to do was just get a landscape, a survey by having conversations with all the different charging developers, understanding any different challenges, pain points, barriers, and we had identified more than 9 different pathways that would just enable the greatest potential increase in deployment volume, and that includes things like circuit feed redundancy requirements, like utility equipment staging size requirements, flexible or temporary interconnection, and just how we can provide earlier visibility for customers, like Alan Marks was just talking about. So we share that with the DWP team, and y'all have been just fantastic partners on just chipping away at a lot of these different items. And there's been really strong alignment and a clear push to get things done. And I guess what's a question for the group here? What's one pathway or solution that you're particularly excited about, and what would that mean? So maybe Michael or Jason, I can tap you here.
Well, I mean, there's so many, and we're kind of in the weeds, but one of the things that you brought up is the staging area. Now, what we require today, and we are going to change this, what we require today is a 20-foot by 30-foot staging area that you can do nothing else on. And imagine if you are building a charging plaza with, a lot of different variables that all have to click, as you just heard, and then we come in and tell you 20, 30, 20 foot by 30 foot we need. That may have made sense years ago in a more steady state scenario. And by the way, the reason that we're in the situation that we're in is not due to sort of negligence or malpractice. We've had a 300 to 400% increase in our new business demand. We've had technology changes. We have aging infrastructure. There's all good reasons for us to be in the situation that we're in. And you often hear many utilities struggle with interconnections, but no other city and no other utility has more to gain from getting this right than LA and LADWP. So, the staging area one, if you're an affordable housing developer, if you're an EV charging plaza developer, that is valuable real estate. And so what we're doing is we're saying, okay, if you can get the transformer and all the electrical equipment really close to the public right away, you can have that land back. That's yours. So we're going to move forward with that. The redundancy requirements. So we, provide 2 feeds to make sure that EV charging plazas and customers have that redundancy because we're very proud of that reliability. Now, if somebody says, I really don't need that, we're going to now allow a single feed and let folks do that. We obviously want to make sure that they fully understand what that means, and that does mean that they're a little bit more vulnerable, and especially if they sell that asset to another owner in the future, we want to make sure that's kind of disclosed because it's very important. But we're introducing a significant amount of flexibility. In addition to that, all of the different affordability pieces, we used to charge developers 100% of that interconnection fee. 100%. And then somebody would come up a year later and tap into that and pay nothing. And that's not right. And so a lot of utilities have sort of gotten ahead of that. We are now doing that. We instituted a fair share program, which honestly needs to be simplified, and we're going to simplify that. That's just a few. And honestly, you can hear from me about all the things I'm excited about, but what matters is the things that the developers are excited about. What actually moves the needle for them? So very curious to hear other thoughts from the group here.
So I'll draft a little bit off what Jason's saying and then kind of zoom out here. What we're talking about right now, we're talking about transportation. We're talking about full-scale decarbonization of the economy, right? At the end of the day, that is what this is about. So what we learn here, what these guys get comfortable with, in a sort of pilot phase with transportation electrification hubs, which is really where we're starting, will be applicable to the new multifamily buildings that we're building all over the city, and all the single-family buildings and the businesses and everything else that we want to build. And in a relatively short period of time, let's call it over a 10 or 20-year period, the globe is attempting to decarbonize everything. So we're trying to get fully off of fossil fuels. So let's not underestimate what it is that we're doing here. The concept that we're going to suddenly make all of our buildings, all of our transportation fed off of LADWP power in the city of Los Angeles is a big deal. That is not a small deal. This is a growth sector compared to most of the other parts of the utility, and it's a massive growth structure. I mean, there's so many other things that have to happen for all of this to, come to fruition. But we are going to do it here. We are doing it. We've had, we have leadership from the mayor. We've had leadership from the previous couple of mayors. This is the city where we are going to prove that it can be done. 100-plus-year-old utility can be modernized. This is doable. And the end result, what we learn from, the Tiger Team efforts, will be applicable broadly across all of our economic sectors here in Los Angeles. So I'm really excited that using the games as the catalyst and the impetus to sort of get this work done will have that much more effect over the next 5 or 10 years in fully decarbonizing the city of Los Angeles.
And Tom, let's just close out with you here. Obviously there's a lot more work to do, but if all of this, goes well, what does that really look like for the developers? What's the end goal here?
I mean, I think a big piece of the puzzle, which is, cold, not sexy, but it's predictability. It's a really big part of our business. It's exactly why our customers hire us, rely upon us. And thus far, I would say predictability has been a moving target in this LA market for these projects. If we can, through this process, land the plane and really translate that into predictability that we're currently experiencing in a lot of other markets and is really critical to our business, that is going to unlock a whole lot of forward investment, deployment of infrastructure, deployment of vehicles by us, our customers, and a whole lot of other stakeholders. That's really what it is for us, is being able to predict when this stuff is all going to come together and make sure that our customers can rely on us and our partners to deliver.
Right on, thank you. And we're going to do our best to land this plane. So I'm excited to continue on this work with you all. I think that's it for this panel. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.